Hello everybody, welcome back to Elden Ring. This is a beginner's guide for Elden Ring, and in this video I'm going to go through the game for about an hour. Now that may sound like a long time, and I know 60 minutes can be long, but I attempted to make like a 10 to 15 minute beginner's guide for Elden Ring, and there is just so much to do, and so many little systems, and so many characters to meet, and things to learn, that 15 minutes really doesn't cut it, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to create a brand new character and play the game for an hour and literally talk at you very fast because I am from New York. And I'm going to teach you basically all the things you need to know to get yourself started in Elden Ring. This is a very long game. And so the opening hour, its job is to teach you how to play the game, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so we're going to start a new game. I'm going to skip all the cutscenes. I'm also going to be mashing through basically all the dialogue. So let's get started. Our first choice that we have to make is we have to pick a starting class. There is a few to choose from. There's Vagabond, Warrior, Hero, Bandit, Astrologer, Prophet, Samurai, Prisoner, Confessor, and Wretch. Okay, so going one by one, Vagabond is your standard knight starting class. It's a very good starting class. It's the one I originally started with. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a sword and board. If you press triangle to show attributes, you can see the starting stats. Stats in Elden Ring can be reset. I don't know, maybe like an eighth of the way through the game. It's a very long game, but you can reset your stats after you kill a certain boss. You just get the option to do it. So the stats kind of don't really matter. They're just a starting point. You can put points into anything as you go through the game and as you gain levels, and you can always respec. So you are not locked into any one of these decisions. It's just how do you want to get started with the game. Vagabond is a really good class. If you do pick this, and I will pick this starting off, I recommend unequipping the halberd when you do, otherwise you will have heavy roll, and I will talk about that in a bit. Warrior is another really good starting class. It starts with 2 swords, so you very quickly learn how to dual wield using R1 and L1, or right bumper, left bumper, depending on what you're playing on. Also starts with a shield, but it's mostly an attack class. Has some really cool armor as well. The hero is your sort of barbarian class. As you can see, not a lot of clothing on them. They're going to take a lot of damage. They do not have high armor. However, they do have a decent arcane rating as well as a big strength rating. Arcane is a stat that affects status debuff, so when you're stacking bleed and that bleed meter fills all the way, it's going to deal more bleed damage. Poisons are going to deal more. Rot's going to deal more. That sort of stuff is going to deal more damage based on your arcane rating. This class starts with an axe and a shield, and that axe is more or less intended to be used with 2 hands. You can one-hand anything and two-hand anything. We'll get into that in a bit. Bandit is your sort of like rogue kind of archetype where they are not super strong up front. However, they do have a high dexterity rating, and so their weapons are typically fast. Really good thing about this class is that it starts with the buckler shield. The buckler shield is better than a regular shield if you want to better learn how to parry enemies, because the startup on the parry, which is with left trigger, or right trigger depending on what's in what hand, but parrying deflects an enemy's attack and opens them up to massive damage. Buckler parries do that faster and more reliably than standard parries. Okay, Astrologer. This is an interesting class, somewhat of like a battle mage kind of class. Starts with a staff and a sword and a couple of spells. So just keep that in mind if you want to start as a caster. This is an okay choice. Prophet is your holy type class. This starts with a spear as well as a seal. Seals are used to cast incantations, which are Elden Ring's version of miracles. However, if you've played other Souls games, or if you've never played a Souls game, one good thing to know in Elden Ring is that holy magic and fire magic are combined into incantations. So your holy class casts both miracles and pyromancies with the same stats. So same build can do both things. The Samurai is hands down probably the best melee starting class or melee focused starting class. It starts with a Uchigatana, which is a samurai katana style sword. Katanas build bleed, and that means that as you continue to deal damage to an enemy, an invisible meter is going to fill up, and when that invisible meter fills all the way up, it's going to deal a huge chunk of bonus damage. It's kind of like cutting the enemy open, and it just becomes a bloodbath. So this is a really good starting class. The other reason it's good is because their armor is very good, but also they start with a bow and arrow. Not all classes do that, and buying a bow and arrow can't really happen for like another hour or so unless you know exactly where to go. So this is probably the best melee starting class. Prisoner is probably the best overall starting class. You start with an S-Talk, which is a sort of like a straight long sword, but you also start with a wand, which allows you to, or a staff, which allows you to cast sorceries, which is this game's version of magic. The spells that this prisoner class starts with are very, very strong and are very good for range. So you kind of have this like best of both worlds where you have a decent weapon as well as the ability to cast spells very early on in the game, right out the gate. So that's another really good class. The Confessor is sort of like a paladin kind of build. You start with a sword and shield as well as a seal to cast incantations, and your armor is a little bit better than the Prophet over here. So the Wretch is if you're looking for a challenge and you want to start at level 1. All of these classes start somewhere between 6 and 12 or something like that, or 6 and 10. Wretch starts at level 1. All the stats are at 10. So this is like your cookie cutter template character. You start with absolutely nothing except for a club. I don't recommend that for your first go around, but if you're looking for a challenge, Wretch is the way to go. I'm going to pick Vagabond just to keep it classy, but if you're starting out with, this is maybe your first Souls game, highly recommend Samurai or Prisoner. They're all good. Okay, so now we got to name our character. So we're just going to call this Starter. Okay, and then we can choose a Keepsake. All of these Keepsakes, this is basically the item that you start the game with. It's an extra little bonus. You can get every single one of these in the game, sometimes pretty early on. Crimson Amber Medallion increases your maximum HP. Land Between Rune allows you to get runes, which are currency. I'll explain that in a little bit. I do not recommend this one under any circumstances. Golden Seed is really good. That allows you to enhance your flasks, which heal and restore mana. So the more golden seeds you find in the world, the more flasks you can carry. So keep that in mind. It's a really good starting gift. It's actually what we're going to use. The Fanged Imp Ashes. These are ashes that allow you to summon helper imps, these little gargoyle things. They are very, very helpful. However, they're not that great, and you get a good summon pretty early on, and you can buy this and find this later on in the game, so don't even bother with this. Cracked Pot, we'll talk about this when we get into the crafting system. Don't take this, it's not worth it. There's plenty of cracked pots in the game. You don't need to take this. Stonesword Key, this is a key that opens various passageways in the game. If you take this and you use it, there's a bit of a trap in the intro area where there's an opportunity to use a stone sword key to unlock this dungeon. However, that dungeon is much, much higher level than a starting zone, so you're meant to come back to it later. So I do not recommend taking the stone sword key. It's a bit of a trap, and you find them all over the place in the game, so don't bother with this. Bewitching Branch is actually a very strong item, but you can learn to craft it somewhat early. The Bewitching Branch allows you to confuse your enemies and get them to attack each other. So it is useful, but you find them pretty early on, and you can craft them not too far after that. Boiled Prawn boosts physical damage negation, so kind of, increases your armor a bit, but you get to buy these later on, no big deal. Shabriri's Woe attracts enemy aggression, so if you're doing that Wretch challenge build, go for this, I guess, but I don't recommend taking this, and you do find Shabriri's Woe later on. So I'm going to take the Golden Seed, and then we are going to finish. Okay, so before we get started in earnest, I want to give a shout out to Marcus from Working Class Nerds for suggesting that I do a video like this. I normally don't do these types of beginner guides, but with the Elden Ring DLC coming out, I figured now's the time. Okay, starting out, we get the ring because we pre-ordered the game 3 years ago, I think. But we do need to pillage these remains, and we get the Tarnished Wizened Finger. I can never say that out loud. In order to open this door, you need that finger, so you'll be trapped in here. However, there is one thing I want to point out, and that is that if you look up on these rafters, you can see something glowing up there. That's a treasure chest, but we can't get to that for a very long time. And we would be able to see that, hey, there's a door here and a staircase, but this door is blocked shut when we try to open it. That should indicate to you that we'll probably come back here later, and that is the way these games work. You will constantly be coming back to places that you've been before, but now new paths will be open to you. Just keep that in mind. It's a recursive world. Okay, so the first thing I recommend doing with the Vagabond class is taking the halberd out of your equipment and just removing that slot, and you'll notice that we are now running a little bit better, and now we can roll faster. You can use the halberd if you like, but I don't recommend having both the halberd and the sword equipped at the same time, at least not yet, but we'll talk about stats in a little bit. All right, so when we move into this room, you'll notice gold fog over there. That's because this is a boss fight. It's a mandatory boss fight. However, you are meant to die to this boss. Very similar to the Vanguard in Demon Souls. You are meant to die to it. You're not supposed to be able to kill it. You can if you're very good, especially if you choose a class that either uses magic or has some sort of range, but you are legitimately meant to die to this thing. It will scream. I'm going to give it an attempt here. I've never actually killed this thing at level 1, but like I said, you do come back here, so you will get your revenge later on in the game. See what we can do here. You have no way to heal yourself at this stage of the game, which is kind of the problem. Yeah, I'm dead. Oh, wow, it missed. Alright, yeah, we're done. Okay, so once your health depletes, you take a forced death. If you manage to kill it, cool. You don't actually really get anything for it. You do get its shield and its sword, but you don't. There's no bonus thing. Demon Souls had the best rewards for killing the intro boss, but the intro boss was very killable. That one is a serious challenge. Okay, so here we have woken up in the Cave of Knowledge, and we immediately get the Flask of Crimson Tears and the Flask of Cerulean Tears added to our inventory. Now, there's a message on the ground that says the Cave of Knowledge lies below. And then we have this ghost here that we can speak to. He says, Brave Tarnished, take the plunge of learning and remembrance. Recall the arts of war and your warrior's blood. If you were to jump down here, and if this is your first Souls game, I highly recommend you do it. There is basically tutorials that come up as you move through this cave. It's a completely linear path, but it teaches you quite a few things, especially the controls. The controls are very, very important to learn. So I recommend doing this cave, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it. But please do that cave, and when you do, you will just end up, see that gold fog there? That's the boss room. The boss is not difficult, but you'll get that item up there. That item back there you don't get until you re-enter this cave from another side. Okay, so let's open this door. Very slowly and dramatically in Souls fashion. And I do want to talk about this. So this is a site of grace. You have quick travel immediately in this game. So if you were to press the touchpad, not sure what it is on PC or Xbox, but if you press the touchpad, it brings up the map. And all of these gold circles are sites of grace. There are hundreds of them throughout the world, or maybe 200, I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot. But you can quick travel to them at any time. There are restrictions around that, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I do want to speak about this fog wall. If you recall, during the character creation, we talked about the keys. This is a pedestal to use a Stonesword key. We do not have one, so we can't open this. But these imp statues typically block or control fog walls, so keep that in mind. We have a purple item here. Purple items are typically very important. Gold ones are always important, and then white ones are common. So use your Magic the Gathering kind of, black, silver, gold kind of thing. All right, so these are just co-op items. Use those if you want to play online. A PlayStation or Xbox subscription is required to play online. The online in this game is actually quite fun. You can summon people into your world to help you, but when you do that, you open yourself up to other players invading your world and trying to kill you, which can be fun if you are the invader. And you can also put down your sign so people can summon you into their worlds, and you can help them out. Okay, welcome to Limgrave. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to light this site of grace. And then we have this gentleman right in front of us in white. This man's name is White Mask Varre. He's wearing a white mask. And if we spam his dialogue, he tells us, you know, oh, you can see the guidance of grace. You should follow it to Stormvale. You should go there. You should go there. You should go there. One thing to know about NPCs in Souls games, they lie sometimes. They are often not very good people, but they do give you some salient advice that you generally should follow, but sometimes it will lead you to your death. Okay, so like I said, you can teleport between sites of grace. We now have 2 unlocked. We have the Stranded Graveyard and the First Step, and then this icon, this sort of robed figure, means that there's an NPC at this site of grace, and that is White Mask Varre. White Mask Varre, for those of you who are just interested in getting to the DLC Shadows of the Erdtree area as quickly as possible, the fastest way to do that is to follow this person's quest line. There are a lot of guides for it. I personally did not make one because upon release of this game, it required online play, and I tend to make my guides using offline play just so they're accessible to everybody, but I'm happy to report that this is now doable completely offline, so just look up a recent guide for that and you'll be able to do it. But he is the quickest way to get you into the DLC area. It is not easy though, so just keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about the guidance of grace here. We can see that this gold trail is coming off of this site of grace. Not every site of grace does this. If you see here, this is a normal site of grace, but this one at the First Step has a trail going this way towards this road. So following the guidance of grace is generally a good idea. It will lead you where you need to go, but not necessarily where you're supposed to go at any one point in time. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. So we have this big dude on a horse with a big spear and a big shield patrolling this area. That is the Tree Sentinel. He can be killed at level 1. It's a little difficult, but it's definitely doable. For now, though, I recommend not even engaging with him and just walking along this path. So throughout the world, we can acquire materials by pressing triangle over them. These are used in crafting, which we will talk about very, very shortly. I am going to just kill a couple of these things, though, to quickly gather some... Oh, this is... I'm not going to get any souls from this. Okay. Well, I was hoping to get a few hundred, but that's quite all right. So we're following the general guidance of grace here, just avoiding the Tree Sentinel that's patrolling around. And the guidance of grace is pointing us toward this church here, this sort of broken down church. I'm going to avoid the front door just in case the Tree Sentinel's nearby. He usually cannot aggro from that far, but I'm just trying to be safe in this guide. So this is the Church of Elleh, and we're going to light the site of grace here. And then we are told about fast travel, which we just spoke about. Right here we have an anvil, or a smithing table. And on the smithing table itself is an item, and this is a level 1 smithing stone. Smithing stones and somber smithing stones are used to upgrade weapons, and this is where we'll talk about stats now. So if we go to our status screen, we can see our current character sheet. We are currently level 9. We have 10 runes in hand. We need 811 to level up to level 10. Our attribute points control different things. Now, this screen may seem very daunting to somebody who doesn't play RPGs, or again, if this is just your first Souls game or your first video game in general. If that is the case and you need help, press the touchpad to bring up the help menu and just go down to explanation, and then you can scroll through the menu, or scroll through the character sheet and see what everything means. So runes held, or current level, runes held, runes needed, vigor, it controls HP, also affects fire resistance and immunity. Mind controls FP, which is mana or focus points. It also affects focus. Endurance attribute governs our stamina, which is the green bar. Affects robustness. That doesn't really mean much, but just kind of ignore that. Attribute also determines how heavy your equipment can be. So if you look over here on equip load, it's the total weight of equipped armaments and armor. Movement slows as load increases. So you can see that our load is 30.8 and our maximum load is 49.8. If we increase our endurance stat as we level up, that max load will go above 49.8 and continue to grow. So if you want to use bigger gear, bigger weapons, bigger armor, put points into endurance. Strength governs strength and how you can wield big swords, and weapons have different requirements of stats, but typically bigger weapons require more strength. Dexterity, this controls quicker weapons and the damage that they deal. Intelligence controls the magic damage that you deal. Certain spells have intelligence requirements, so you can't even use them unless you have a certain level of intelligence, but intelligence does increase the amount of damage that your spells do. Faith is the same exact thing, except for incantations and holy and fire and stuff like that. So intelligence and faith, these are your two magic sort of stats. Spells for intelligence, incantations for faith. One thing that I accidentally skipped over was mind. A piece that I skipped over was that mind, the higher you increase it, the greater your FP pool will be, or your maximum FP or your mana pool. So the more mind that you have, the more spells you can cast before refilling, and many spells do have high FP requirements, so just keep that in mind. You may have the intelligence requirement to cast a spell, but you may not have enough mana to cast that spell once, so you will have to increase your mind as you also increase intelligence and faith. Arcane, this affects discovery. Don't worry about that. It's not exactly helpful to have a high arcane stat if you're trying to farm for items or something. It's not really worth it to increase for that purpose. However, it is worth it to increase for the debuffs on enemies. Like I said earlier, if you're using a weapon that builds bleed, having a higher arcane rating will mean that bonus bleed damage is greater. So it is worth building into arcane if you're using those sorts of debuffs. And that's basically it for this screen. These numbers will go up as you place points into stats. And yeah, that's kind of how it works. So one thing that I'll mention here is memory slots. We currently have 2 memory slots. The memory slots control the number of spells that we can have on us at any one time. And if you want to equip spells, you do so by resting at a site of grace and going into the spells menu, which is right here, memorize spell. So you just select a slot, and then if you have spells here, you just assign them to the slots, and then those slots correspond to up on the D-pad, which you can see flashing in the bottom left corner. So this menu in the bottom left corner is controlled by the D-pad. If you press left, basically what it's doing is it's cycling into these slots, and if you press right, it's cycling into these slots because these are the right-hand armaments. These are the left-hand armaments. Here on the equipment screen, we have our armor. It's pretty self-explanatory to just select things. You build you build the sort of character that you want as you play the game, and certain armor has certain boosts. If you ever want to learn more about an armor, just highlight it and press square, and then you'll get the full sort of breakdown. The starting sets really don't have anything special about them. They're more just for looks and armor rating, though. These are the quick items, so these correspond to down on the D-pad. By default, your flasks will be here. And then you can also equip items as you go. One thing that I really, really recommend doing starting off is disabling all of the motion control gestures. Just press square on the squares, and then they will be gone. The worst thing in the world is when you're fighting an enemy and you accidentally shake your controller and the game registers an emote, and then you do that emote and you're stuck in that emote and you die. Just get rid of them. They're not worth it on the motion sort of thing. Okay, so this gentleman here, his name is Kalé, and this Santa Claus looking dude is a vendor. So I always recommend, if there are additional dialogues with NPCs, listen to them. You want to listen to everybody. And this person right here is making a recommendation that you purchase the crafting kit from their inventory. I will do this once we get some souls or some runes. We are going to do that in a little bit. One thing that I want to mention about runes, though, is that it is a universal currency. And what I mean by that is runes are spent when you want to level up your character, when you want to upgrade your weapons, and when you want to purchase things. They all use the same currency, so you are constantly making decisions about what to do with your runes. When you see a vendor, especially early on, you may want to hold off on purchasing the cookbooks. The cookbooks are basically what teaches you recipes. So if we highlight this one, this is the Nomadic Warriors Cookbook number 1. We press square and we can see that it teaches us how to craft bone arrows, fletched bone arrows, and bone bolts. The second cookbook teaches us how to craft glowstones, invigorating cured meat, and invigorating white cured meat. And then the missionary's cookbook teaches us how to craft holy water pots and roped holy water pots. None of these, except for maybe the arrows, are particularly useful early on in the game. So while I do recommend purchasing the crafting kit as soon as possible, these cookbooks, not necessarily important. That said, however, you do want to purchase them whenever you can, because the more recipes you know, the more versatile your character is going to be, and you're going to be able to handle more and more situations that the game throws at you. Buying the torch is also a really good idea because some of the caves that we go into are quite dark. The other thing that this vendor sells, and a lot of vendors sells, are notes. Notes are in-game hints on where either important items are, bosses, puzzles, something. The notes are important. However, very early on in the game, when your runes are scarce, I don't recommend purchasing these, especially if you're using a guide or something. These typically point you to optional things, so early on, I don't really recommend purchasing these. The Flask of Wondrous Physik, though, is something that is very important, but I will show you where to get it in this video, so don't worry about it too much, and I'm also going to show you where the waypoint ruins are in this video. So that's the vendor. Buy the cookbooks, buy the crafting kits. Also purchase the cracked pots that they sell. There are a limited number of cracked pots in the game, and these are used in conjunction with crafting to create things like fire pots and sleep pots and frost pots and all that. You can only craft X number of pots, where X equals the number of pots in your inventory. So the more pots you purchase, the more pots you can have on you at any one time that you craft. Okay, cool. So that is crafting, that is stats, that is vendors. The first thing we got to do after the Church of Elleh is we need to once again follow the guidance of grace. And to do that, we're going to move in this northeasterly direction. I'm actually going to kill a couple of enemies as we do this, just so I can get my runes up a little bit and we can purchase that crafting kit. So luckily, these first enemies in this field in Limgrave are pretty weak. They're not really going to pose too much of a threat. But you'll notice there that I was kind of just swinging my sword. I want you to know I wasn't really just like swinging for the fences and mashing R1. I was actually timing those sword swings. And the reason that I point that out is because if you do just mash R1 and you do just swing for the fences, you're going to get punished all the time. So it's very, very important that you are constantly looking at what you're fighting and seeing how they are reacting to the blows you're dealing to them. Because if they have a high poise rating, they're going to take the damage, but they're going to be able to tank that damage and start swinging their sword right back at you as they take damage. So it's very, very important that you see how things react when you're hitting them and you're not just mashing. Okay, so we can crouch by pressing in the left stick or pressing L3, and then while we're crouched, and as long as the enemy hasn't already seen us, we can walk right into their backs, and if you do this and press R1, you get a backstab, which gives you a massive amount of damage, and also generally kills things in 1 or 2 hits. Okay, so this is an encampment that we're really not going to mess with too hard right now. There is a very important item in there, however, and that is the Whetstone. So we are going to venture into it, but I'm deliberately not really going to kill anything. I'm just going to get that Whetstone and leave. Before we do that, however, we want to rest at this particular side of grace. This is probably the most important side of grace in the entire game. So if we touch this side of grace and we rest at it, an NPC is going to show up. 100% of the time, this is a scripted event, and her name is Melina. Melina is more or less our guide through this game. She stays with us throughout the entire game, basically, and she unlocks the leveling menu. So she asks us to take her to the foot of the Erd Tree. We say yes, and then she gives us the Spectral Steed Whistle, which allows us to summon our mount, Torrent the Ox. Okay, so she gives us the Torrent Whistle, and then this unlocks the level up menu, and she says, shall I turn your runes into strength? And our reply is, well, I'm certainly not turning them into dex now, am I? Okay, so this is the leveling up menu. We can use the runes that we've acquired to spend or to adjust our stats. You can always move them up, and like I said at the very beginning of this video, you do unlock the ability to change your stats and respec and move everything around later on in the game. So just the starting class you chose is not a permanent starting class. It's just to get you started, but you can do whatever you want with your character sheet, whatever you want. However you want to build your character, do it. The one thing that I absolutely recommend, though, is prioritize Vigor. This increases the amount of health you have. The cap on Vigor is 60. Yes, it can go to 99, but the returns for 61 through 99, the amount of HP that you're gaining is a fraction of what you gain from 1 through 60. So Vigor is very, very important. I recommend prioritizing Vigor, getting to about 20 to 25, and then focusing on the rest of your stats. Now, all this said about leveling up, it's actually more important that you level up your weapons on the crafting tables. The reason for that is because the damage increases you get when leveling your weapons and spending those smithing stone shards, the extra damage that you get from that weapon far exceeds what you would get from 1 point of a stat increase. So you should always be leveling up your weapons whenever you find smithing stone shards. It is way more important to level your weapon than your character itself. Because at the end of the day, the smarter you play, the less reliant you're going to be on your stats. At least until you want to make a specific kind of build or be a mage or something like. But if you're just playing melee, the smarter you are as a player and the more intelligently you play, the less reliant you are going to be on your stats. But that weapon needs to deal damage, so focus on leveling your weapons. Okay, I'm also going to go to the Flask menu. I'm going to spend that golden seed we started with and add a charge to our Flask, and then we're basically done with this menu. Now you notice it's nighttime. That is very important. Enemies act differently at night. Soldiers will be sleeping. Bats will be flying around. Some bosses only show up at night in the world. So day and night cycle is important in Elden Ring. You're typically more or less better off adventuring at night just so you see more enemy types. There's a boss like way down this road called the Knight's Calvary. It only shows up at night, and there's a bunch of Knight's Cavalry throughout the game that only show up at night. You don't have to focus on the day and night cycle too much, but if you're curious about exploring and you want to see if there's any additional bosses around that you haven't found, go at night. Okay, so we have the Spectral Steed Whistle. What I actually recommend doing with that is going to your start menu here, and then go to the pouch. Sorry, I misclicked. Go to the pouch, and then we're going to press triangle to switch what's in the pouch on up. I'm going to assign this to the Spectral Steed Whistle. The way the pouch works is these are like super quick access for items. So I have assigned the Spectral Steed Whistle to up on the D-pad, and now if we hold triangle, it brings up the pouch, and if we press up, we use the whistle, and we summon Torrent. Okay, so Torrent is our mount. He's this cute little ox boy. He's the best boy. And Torrent has a double jump, so you just press X twice, and you get a double jump. This is insanely useful for clearing certain gaps, and of course, you can acquire materials while on Torrent. Just mash triangle or, I guess, Y on Xbox. Okay, so this is an encampment, like I said. I'm not going to kill everything in this encampment, but what I am going to do is I'm going to kill this first enemy here because he is guarding this carriage, and this carriage holds a chest. So that chest has a weapon in it called the Lordsworn's Greatsword, and that Greatsword deals a decent amount of damage. I'm not going to be able to use it, but I do just want to show it to you to kind of get things moving here. So we're going to backstab this guy. And you'll notice I waited for that patrolling enemy to leave, and if you look closely in his right hand, there's a horn. If we were to have attacked him, or if he were to have spotted us, he would blow that horn, and every single enemy in this encampment will come after us. Okay, so opening the chest, we got the Lordsworn's Greatsword. And then down here, I'm going to hide in this bush really quick, and we're going to talk about the map. So on the map, you can see the Guidance of Grace is pointing us to the northwest. However, if you look really closely, there's this like brown icon on the map. This brown icon indicates the location of a map stele. This is a map stele, this like pillar thing here. And if you look closely, there's a purple treasure down there. Map steles hold map fragments, and map fragments are the actual map. This, what we're looking at, is not really the map. It's just sort of like this brown etching, shows you the main road, but we can actually fill in this map if we were to collect map fragments. So I'm very quickly going to kill this guy by backstabbing him. Very good. Nobody has woken up yet. And then I'm going to pick up this treasure, which is the map fragment, and that is for Limgrave West. I'm going to go back into the bush because that big dude patrolling is not very friendly. And if we go back to the map, we now see that we have an actual map of our area. With this map fragment, we have really important points of interest. This right here, this is a telescope. Most zones have a telescope, which literally just zoom up and give you a bird's eye view of the area, allowing you to highlight points of interest. This right here, this is a mine. Mines hold upgrade materials for your weapons. That's where you get smithing stone shards. And then all around, we have ruins. We have a river here. There's caves along this river. There is a bridge that leads to the east side of Limgrave. We have this major road that goes all the way down south across a bigger bridge into a new area. This gray icon, little symbol, this is an Evergaol. This is just a boss fight. It's just a straight up, you take a portal into a boss fight, you fight a boss, you leave. There's Evergaols. There's another one over here. They're all throughout the world. And we can actually see where the guidance of grace is guiding us along this particular road into this particular building. We have this huge broken bridge with something at the end. We have this Colosseum over here. We know that there's an NPC named a Finger Reader Crone along this bridge here. So there's a lot on the map. There's an island over here. How do we get to the island if there's no swimming in Elden Ring? Well, maybe there's a cave along this cliffside that then goes underground and pops you out on the island. Maybe. Who knows? But this is how maps work. I highly, 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 highly recommend that anytime you enter a new zone, you look on the map, it'll be gray, but then you look for the map still by looking for that orange, rusty icon and head in that direction. You will find the map fragment there. Okay, so I mentioned in this encampment is the Whetstone, and the Whetstone allows us to change the affinity on our weapon, which means that we can change the stat scaling of our weapon. That is a very, very important item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that I normally never do, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to show you exactly where it is, and we are going to skip fighting anything. Right here in this encampment, if we were to go down this staircase and open this door, there will be a chest inside, and inside the chest is the Whetstone. Cool, so we got the Whetstone knife and the Ash of War Storm Stomp. Ashes of War are abilities that you can put on weapons and shields that are all different. So you can do all different things with Ashes of War. There's like 1 million of them in the game, and they are all unique abilities that you can then attach to your weapon and use. Okay, so now that we have the Whetstone, we're going to go back to the Church of Elleh. The Church of Elleh is sort of like a central hub for this stage of the game. You should go back to this place a lot and speak with Kalé, especially if you go to the eastern side of Limgrave and you hear howling in the woods. Go talk to Kalé about that. He will have a new dialogue option for you. When we warp back to the Church of Elleh, after receiving the spectral steed whistle to summon Torrent, our mount, an NPC is going to show up. She will only show up, though, if you teleport to the Church of Elleh. She will not show up if you just walk there. She only shows up if you teleport after receiving Torrent. And this NPC's name is Renna. So Renna asks if we can summon the spectral steed. We answer honestly. You definitely want to answer honestly. You say, I can call the spectral steed, and then she will give us the spirit calling bell as well as the lone wolf ashes. The spirit calling bell allows us to use spirit ashes, such as the lone wolf ashes, or if you picked the fanged imp ashes earlier on in the game, you can summon those as well. So just speak with her a little bit more, and then she will eventually disappear. She turns out to be a very important NPC much later on in the game, but just remember that, she paid you a visit. So now what I recommend doing is on your quick item, put the lone wolf ashes, and then whenever you're in a boss fight area, or in the case of a big encampment, such as the gate front, you'll notice an icon on the left side of your screen. It's right near the fire. So this pale icon on the screen, sort of reminiscing of like a gravestone or something, means that you can use spirit ashes in this area. So we use that, we use the bell, and then it just summons the wolves. So any spirit ash that you want to use, just go ahead and put it on your quick items. You can only have one spirit ash out at a time. This one summons a pack of wolves, but you can only use one spirit ash kind of item at a time. And in boss fights, you can only summon them once. So if they die, but they do offer a little bit of help, and anytime you rest at a site of grace, they automatically disappear. They do cost mana. Some of them do have high mana costs or FP costs, so just keep that in mind. You may have to increase your mind stat in order to use certain spirit summons. Okay, there is an important NPC over this way. So we're going to go east. I'm avoiding all these guys. I'm not even worrying about them. But you'll notice a Site of Grace in the distance there, so that's our destination. Sites of Grace tend to be drawn in the distance much further than anything else, allowing you to see them better. And if you look closely, you can see some wings flapping in the distance there. Those are bats. Like I mentioned, bats fly around at night. These bats are present during the day, but they're typically sleeping. But at night, they do fly around. I was going to attempt to kill them to get some runes, but not going to bother because they've flown towards a camp, and I don't want to deal with everybody. Instead, we're going to go down this road, and I'm going to show you the telescope. But before I do that, somebody's going to speak to us. Somebody says, "Oi, you there," and asks us for help. But as you approach the noise, and this is why playing with sound is very important, Marcus from Working Class Nerds, he just mutes the music for some reason. Anyway, as you approach the source of the sound, there's no one here. However, this bush looks different, and there's actually a player hint on the ground that says, "Try attacking." If you roll directly into the bush, it smokes, and then it reveals an NPC. This is Bach the Seamster. Bach the Seamster has been bullied out of a cavern on the shore, and they have stolen an heirloom from his mother or something like that. It's a sewing kit. If you help this gentleman and you go to the cave on the shore, which is right around here, you'll be able to kill the boss there, and then you can help him out and return the sewing needle to him, and then you can alter your garments and change the look of them. It's nothing too involved. It's either like a binary option, like it looks this way or it looks this way, and then because it doesn't have a cape, now it has, less armor or something. Like, it's nothing crazy, but fashion souls are very important in the Souls universe. It's the true end game, as John Aldridge likes to say, who's a viewer of mine. So Bach the Seamster is a very important NPC. Recommend doing his quest line over here. Now you'll notice I put a marker on my map, and it is visible within the world. So that marker is down here, and now we can see the blue beacon. You can place, I think, up to 5 of them. Yeah, you can place up to 5 in the world at any one time, and then they all appear all over. You can place them anywhere on the map, even in places that you can't necessarily get to. You can still place a marker over there, but just keep that in mind. Okay, so now that we've done that, it is time to talk about how to upgrade things and the various dungeons within this game. So we're going to go back to the Church of Elleh, and then I'm going to begin explaining to you the different types of dungeons. So if we were to hop on Torrent here and then head up this particular hill, we will find ourselves a statue. And this statue is called a statue of Rosus. And Rosus was an important person in this world, and now there are monuments dedicated to him. If we examine a statue of Rosus, the message comes up and it says, "This is the guide and gatekeeper for those returning to the roots." And a blue beam comes out of his candle. And if we look on the world map, we can actually see this blue beam coming out of the statue, and it's pointing us in this direction. So we're going to place a marker here, and we're going to follow this blue beam of light. And statues of Rosus will always direct you towards Catacombs. Catacombs are one of 4 dungeon types in this game. There are catacombs, mines, and caves, and legacy dungeons. And legacy dungeons are basically going to be like the final thing we talk about. So following the guidance of Rosus, we find ourselves a door in the cliff, and inside is a catacomb. Every time you find a dungeon in the game, there will be a Site of Grace, I think every single time. So go ahead and activate that. But you'll notice if you go to your map screen, quick travel is disabled while we're in this dungeon. Quick travel is disabled until you kill the boss of the dungeon, so just keep that in mind. But you can just leave, right? Like, the door is literally right here, and then you can quick travel again. The reason they do that is because they don't want you to be like super deep in a dungeon, get lost, and then be able to warp out. They want you to figure these things out. Okay, each type of dungeon has different upgrade materials. Legacy dungeons tend to have all 3. But in this dungeon in particular, we will have access to Glovewort. And I'm just carefully trying to see where there might be some Glovewort. That imp statue is an enemy. I'm not even going to bother with him, but just be aware, imps are everywhere in dungeons. So, dungeons work very, very similar to Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne. And what I mean by that is, in a Chalice dungeon, you have a locked door that leads to a boss, and your job is to find the switch. The switch is that statue right there, but of course it's up on a platform. There's no ladder. You've got to find your way to it, so good luck with that. Now, in Catacombs, we have a material called Glovewort, which is just Lily of the Valley. It's an old English way of saying Lily of the Valley, which is a flower you put on someone's grave. Glovewort is used to level up summons, and I will show you the NPC that levels those up, and I'm talking about the ash summons, the spirit ashes. So Catacombs have spirit ashes. I'm not going to do this dungeon. I have walkthroughs for this entire game. If you need help in it, just look that up on my channel. Okay, so next I'm going to show you the location of a cave. Light in Elden Ring and light in any video game is typically always an indicator of where you should be going. You should always be following the light and looking out for the light. So, if we were to travel eastward from that catacomb, we will eventually see a campfire. And somebody sitting in front of a campfire. And then as we approach this cave, we'll see a torch outside. That torch leads into a cave. I am going to kill this guy because I want runes and I want to go over the crafting system. So I'm just going to murder this guy really fast. Just a quick murder. Great. Murder successful. So here we have a cave. This is the Grove Side Cave. Caves are chock full of natural resources. Things like cave moss, cracked crystals. They typically house animals, and you want the animal bones to craft arrows. So it's very important, and you'll typically want to bring a torch with you and put that torch in your left hand, cycle to the torch, and you'll have a sword in your right hand and a torch in your left hand. Now, I didn't have enough runes to purchase the torch way back when, so we're doing this. The wolves have spotted me. They're going to begin to jump up here. It's not a huge deal. We can kill them as they come up. However, the white wolf is like the mama wolf, so you want to be careful with her. She has a ton of health. I'm just going to drop down, kill this one really fast. Mama wolf drops back down. I'm using circle to roll away to try to give myself a bit of an advantage. This fire is not going to do any damage. Wolves tend to attack twice before giving you a turn, so just keep that in mind. Right here, we loot this. This is a cracked pot. We'll talk about that when we actually purchase the crafting. When you're in a dark cave, I recommend pressing in the right stick or pressing R3. This way you can target enemies that you can't necessarily see yet. I do believe that the target distance is reduced in the dark. Somebody please correct me on that if I'm wrong. But as we go through this cave, there are more wolves, and then we are going to fight our first boss. This boss is the Beastman of Farum Azula. It's not a terribly difficult boss. This is our first opportunity to use Spirit Ashes. So go ahead and summon the Lone Wolf Ashes. The boss aggroes to us, and then we can go to work. Now, this boss does have a really big weapon, and he tends to swing it a lot before actually giving you a turn. But as you can see here, the wolves are just annoying the heck out of him. And so we can actually... Ooh, okay, you got us trapped in a corner here. That can happen. So what I was going to say is because the wolves are just annoying him, constantly interrupting him, they kind of open him up for backstabs all the time. So if you can try to get behind him, like get behind him square, it's probably not going to happen now that I wanted to. Okay. You should be able to backstab him, but the wolves are like kind of doing too much good work here. So the wolves are jumping on him, they're constantly interrupting his attacks. The wolves are really, really strong in this game, and the wolves literally just killed him for me. So that's the Beastman of Farum Azula. For our troubles, we get the Flame Drake Talisman, so we can go to our Talisman menu and equip that, and that gives us more strength, or more defense against fire. Every time you every time you kill a boss in a dungeon, a teleporter will show up. That brings you back to the entrance. However, there is a bit of a drawback to using these teleporters, and that is it is literally just a teleport. When you use it, it does not send you back to a site of grace, it sends you back to the entrance. Doing so will not replenish any flasks you've used, and it will not replenish your health or your mana. So, in most cases, you're better off just teleporting there yourself. This way, it does replenish everything. Okay. If you're wondering, the first stake, any stake of Marika that you see until you loot it, will have the small golden effigy, which allows you to use summoning pools. Summoning pools allow you to see the summon signs of other players, so you can bring them into your world to help. Okay. Just going to take a quick drink of coffee here, because I've been talking for 49 minutes straight. Okay, so back here at the Church of Elleh, we now have some runes, and so now we can purchase that crafting kit. Very good. And then we'll purchase a torch as well, and I'll purchase one of the hints. And I guess a cookbook. I'm never going to play this character again. Okay, so with the crafting kit, we now have access to item crafting. So go to the item crafting menu, which is now available as the second option. And then here we can craft whatever we like. Rainbow stones are probably the most useful thing to craft. Rainbow stones work in a really funny way where they're meant as sort of like breadcrumbs. So you need a ruin fragment to craft them. Ruin fragments can be found basically on top of any fallen ruin. Although, as I said, yep, here's one. Perfect. We found ourselves a ruin fragments. Now we can go to the crafting menu, highlight rainbow stones, and craft one. Okay, rainbow stones, like I said, are mostly to be used as breadcrumbs. However, there's a bit of a hidden mechanic with them that is extremely helpful. So I am going to try to hop up here. Okay, whatever, doesn't matter. We're going to put the rainbow stone on our bar right here. And I'm really glad we have glowstones as well. So when we place a rainbow stone, it'll be a random color. Let's see what we get this time. We got green. Okay, so if you drop a rainbow stone off of a tall place, and that rainbow stone lands and lights up and stays on the ground, that means that you will survive that fall, that same exact fall distance. You will survive it as long as your health is full. If it breaks when you're dropping, when you toss the rainbow stone over the ledge and it shatters, that means you're going to die if you jump from that height. However, glowstones ignore that rule. Glowstones are very good for lighting up passageways, but you should never use them as a resource to tell you whether or not you're going to survive something. That is exclusive to rainbow stones. Okay, so that's item crafting. And pot crafting is in here as well. We have one cracked pot, so we just need to find a smoldering butterfly. Smoldering butterflies are typically around fire. So just pick one of those up, and then you'll be able to craft that pot. And then the more pots you pick up, the more you'll be able to use. Okay, so we did catacombs and caves. Now it's time to talk about mines. So this is a mine right here, and again, your first mission in a new zone should be to find the map stele. We knew that that was over here, and then once you get that map, start looking for the mine. This way you know where to go to upgrade your weapon again. So we're going to teleport to Agheel Lake North, and then we're going to go into that mine. I'm going to ignore basically everything along the way. All right, so we can see our marker here. However, that's going to be a bit of a big cliff, so we're going to have to go down a bit. Yeah, like we would not survive this fall. Should have used the rainbow stone there to prove it, but that's okay. All right. We should survive this fall, though. Yeah, great. Okay, so now we're going to turn around, and we're going to go into this lake. A big crab is going to show up, though. Oh, we actually skipped it. Nice. All right. And whenever you pass over one of your markers, it will it'll go away automatically. All right, so we're going to take out our torch, and this is the Limgrave Tunnel. So you may be thinking, hey, it's an elevator. Let me take it. Not necessarily. When you enter a mine, you want to look over the first ledge, because if there is a ledge to drop down to, there's little caverns. And inside of these caverns sometimes are materials. So it's always worth it to take the long way down an elevator shaft rather than just immediately taking the elevator. So the pattern is basically always the same. So you just keep going in a clockwise fashion, around and around and around, and you just keep dropping. Cool. So now we can activate this side of grace, and I am going to recall the elevator because we're not going to fight the boss of this place. We are just going to leave. Before we leave, though, mines are incredibly important. And the reason for that is because mines hold smithing shards. And what's really cool about Elden Ring is that the smithing shards often are like on the walls. You will find smithing shards throughout the world on corpses and when you kill certain things, and they might be in treasure chests, but in mines, they're always on the walls. And wherever these guys are hacking away, chances are there's a smithing stone shard. So we can actually just crouch, walk right up to it. That will aggro him, but we're going to ignore him. But now we have an extra smithing stone shard. And that means we have 2, because we picked one up off of that anvil earlier in the Church of Elleh. And now we can spend those smithing stone shards and level up our weapon. Excuse me. However, I think I'm short on runes, so I don't actually think we're going to be able to do that, but let's find out real quick. So let's go back to the Church of Elleh now that we have a smithing stone shard and see if we can upgrade our weapon. If we can't, it's not a huge deal. Okay, I don't have enough runes to do it, so you need runes and smithing stone shards. It's okay. This anvil out in the world, and I think there's a couple of other anvils, I know of at least one, these can only level up your weapon to +3. However, eventually you will get invited to Roundtable Hold, and there is a blacksmith there that will level up your weapons all the way up to +25 for normal weapons and +10 for special weapons. So look out for Smithing Master Hugh. He is in Roundtable Hold, and you will eventually get there on your own. Okay, we've talked about mines, caves, catacombs. Now it's time to do the last couple things here as we wrap up this video, and that is to show you the NPC that levels up your spirit summons. So I'm going to teleport to the gate front just to make this go a little bit faster, and I'm going to introduce you to an NPC named Roderika. Roderika can be found in a Stormhill shack, so you want to blast through this area as quickly as possible. Watch out for the troll who is going to jump, but luckily Torrent can just go through these little wood things. I'm going to grab a smoldering butterfly really quick. Hopefully I don't die in the process of this. I just saw them here, and I want to show you how pots work. Cool, got a smoldering butterfly, and we're moving right along. All right, so on horseback, you can press L1 to swing your sword out of on the left side, and then R1 to swing on the right side. I don't know if they ever explained that, but it's L1, R1. Okay, this is an Erd Tree sapling or Erd Tree sprout. These, 99 times out of 100, carry golden seeds. So whenever you find these things, loot the golden seed. This way you can upgrade your flask again. Now, I would normally follow that road, but it does cause some wolves to spawn, so I'm just going to hop up here to the Stormhill shack manually, and we're going to light this side of grace. And here we are at the Stormhill shack. So we can pop up here to get this purple item. Stonesword key, very good. And then we can speak with this NPC. This NPC's name is Roderika. She is the person who will level up our spirit ashes. However, she will not do that until she leaves for Roundtable Hold. There are 2 conditions to get her to do that. So make sure you speak with her to get the spirit jellyfish ashes. That's very important. That jellyfish is actually used in a puzzle towards the end of the game, believe it or not, so it's important. But she asks us to go to Stormvale Castle and deliver a message for her people, let her know that she's out here or something like that. And then if you deliver a message back to her from those folks, she will then move to Stormvale Castle. She will then move to Roundtable Hold, sorry. The other way to do it is to defeat the final boss of Stormvale Castle, and then she will leave automatically. She will automatically get pushed to Roundtable Hold. Okay, so that is spirit tuning, and again, you use Glovewort to level up your ashes with Roderika. When you get to Roundtable Hold, you have to talk to Roderika once she arrives, talk to Smithing Master Hugh, talk to Roderika, talk to Smithing Master Hugh, talk to Roderika, reload, and then she will eventually become the spirit tuner. It's like this weird dialogue tree that you got to go through, but she's the person. Okay, there is something over here, another form of currency that I need to tell you about very quickly, and I'm also going to introduce you to Evergaols, but the form of currency that I'm speaking of are Starlight Shards. Starlight Shards are used much later on in the game to purchase things. There are a finite number of Starlight Shards in the game, but they can almost always be found at these like satellite dish things that are often on cliffs. So whenever you're in a new area, maybe take a moment to go along the cliffside, and you'll eventually find a Starlight Shard or 2 or 10. So that's a Starlight Shard. You really can't do much with them until much later on in the game. Just wanted to point them out to you. Now, the other thing that I want to point out to you is an Evergaol. It's this gray icon on the map. An Evergaol, I believe I mentioned this before, but an Evergaol is basically just a door to a boss fight. There are a lot of Evergaols throughout the game, and they all have a different boss, and those bosses tend to drop a weapon or an item or something of importance, so it's worth going in and fighting them. Most of them are just unlocked, right off the jump. As you can tell, this one is glowing purple. That means it's available. but some of them are locked. A couple of them required Stonesword keys, and so there's going to be like an imp statue right outside of it. But then one of them requires a bit of questing to unlock, but it kind of happens on its own if you just play through the game. Okay, so I'm not going to fight this boss because it is quite difficult, but all you have to do is just walk up to the Evergaol circle, examine it, and you get sent to the boss. That's it. Cool. So, the last item that I want to talk about, and this will likely send us to Roundtable Hold, but I am going to go into my inventory, and I'm going to look at the note that I purchased from Kalé about the Flask of Wondrous Physik, so we can examine this using Square. The note says, quote, "A flask of wondrous Physik still remains in the Third Church of Marika, north of the Mistwood. Cross the highway bridge and follow the animal trail north." So, the highway bridge, depending on how you look at it, could be this one or it could be this one. I believe they're talking about this one, so that's where we're going to go. So, let us quickly teleport to Aghill Lake North, and then we will follow that bridge. All right, before we do that, though, I'm just going to quickly change the time of day to nighttime. We're going to go to past time. We're going to rest until nightfall. And the reason for this is because there is a group of bosses that appear in the world only at night, and they are called Knight's Calvary. And you can actually see them right over here. And if we were to actually use this telescope, we get a bird's eye view and actually get an even better view of it. So it's that black figure walking across that bridge near my marker. And using the telescope, you can see a whole bunch of stuff. You can see a tower over there, a building over there. Looks like a minor Erd tree over there, another minor Erd tree. That's the start of the game, that statue. You got that island in the distance. You got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So the telescopes are really, really useful to kind of show you the zones that you're in. But this Knight's Cavalry is a boss that only shows up at night. And you'll notice he's kind of guarding this glowing orb here. This is a crystal scarab. Crystal scarabs, these silver ones and gold ones and red ones, or bronze ones, rust-colored ones, I should say, they typically drop an item. And you will automatically get it once it's dead. This is the Ash of War Determination. Before this guide is up, I will discuss Ashes of War, because there's actually a vendor that sells them very close by. So this is a Knight's Cavalry. I'm going to skip him. Please don't kill me. I'm going to skip him, and then we're going to follow the animal trail north, just like the note said. This is the animal trail. It's an unpaved road. So this is going to lead us to our Flask of Wondrous Physik. And the Knight's Cavalry is basically following us, but he'll get tired and leave eventually. Alright, so I'm just trying to avoid enemies, but we're still following this trail. There's a whole bunch of bats over there, because it's nighttime and the bats are out. That's what always happens. And as we come down here, we're going to continue along the trail. And then, oops, sorry. Phone was ringing. And then there's a Site of Grace here. It was actually my watch. I hate how my watch rings. I got to disable that. So let's rest at the Site of Grace, and this is just a checkpoint. We're not really going to use this for any particular reason, but it's always good to light them whenever you see them. So we're going to continue to follow the animal trail, which is this brown road here. And then if you look closely, you'll see somebody on top of that ruin, and he'll eventually speak with us. That is Kenneth Height. You can help him if you like. He has a very, very good quest line that has insanely good rewards by the end of it. But we're going to continue to follow this animal trail. There is a troll in our path, so I'm going to casually walk around him. I'm going to try to get pretty far because these guys are huge and can see great distances. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. If he roars, I'm going to be a little upset. Okay, we're safe. All right, so this is the Church of Marika, the Third Church of Marika that the note spoke of. And you can see in the bowl over there, we have a gold item, which is always good. Let's go ahead and pick this up. This is a Sacred Tear. Sacred Tears allow you to increase the amount of healing that flasks do. Golden Seeds increase the amount of flasks that you can hold. Let's pick up this item. And we get the Flask of Wondrous Physik. The tooltip says you can find crystal tears at the bases of minor Erd trees and elsewhere throughout the lands between. At Sites of Grace, you can mix 2 crystal tears in the Flask of Wondrous Physik. This will allow you to create elixirs with various custom effects. So, we got the Crimson Crystal Tear and a Flask of Wondrous Physik. there is only one Flask of Wondrous Physik per character. You don't get a new one when you go to New Game Plus. There's only one, and they are insanely powerful, so that is why. If we rest at the Site of Grace, we may get taken to Roundtable hold. We did not, which is completely fine. So let's go to Mix Wondrous Physik, and now we can create a flask with that Physik. So we only have one tier so far. It's the Crimson Crystal tier. It restores half of our health. If you were to find another Crystal Crimson tier, it would restore the other half of your health bar. But the Crystal tiers have tons of effects. They increase fire damage, increase magic damage, make you invisible. They do all sorts of things. So always be experimenting with Crystal Crimson tiers. And there's even one Crystal tier that has very important quest implications for Moog. So be on the lookout for that later on in the game. You need that. You don't need it, but it's intended for you to use that tier in the Moog fight in order to help yourself. Cool. So we can go ahead and equip that. And then if we speak with Melina at any Church of Marika, she'll offer us a bit of lore. So, always speak with her. Tell her that you're interested. She gives you tons of lore. She's a really good storyteller. She's very, very helpful. We can add a charge to our flask using that golden seed and then increase the HP restored using the sacred tier. And then we're going to leave. Okay, let us speak about Ashes of War now. So let's go back to the Stormhill Shack, and then we're going to go find another NPC very close by named Bernahl. Great. Welcome back to Stormhill. Bernahl is east of Roderika. So if we follow this particular animal trail, this little road, it will lead us to another shack. Also, something that I want to point out, you can see that Site of Grace over there. Something that I want to point out is these cemeteries, the bodies have sort of been exhumed, but there's oftentimes runes along these coffins, and then you can purchase those and then sell those to vendors for their currency. So they're very, very important. Whenever you see those graveyards, go ahead and loot them. All right, so this Site of Grace over here is the War Master's Shack. So go ahead and light that. And then you can speak with Bernahl. Or Bernahl. Alright, so if you tell him my faith holds firm, he will become a vendor of Ashes of War. So you can learn skills from him. You could purchase Ashes of War from him. He has quite a few on offer. And he does move throughout the game, so you'll find him again eventually. And I believe his inventory increases depending on where he is. Could be wrong on that, but I'm almost positive he gets new stuff. Okay, so using that Whetstone, or Whetblade, that we got so long ago, back in the Stormhill, the Gatefront encampment, we can go to the Ashes of War menu, and then assign an Ash of War to our weapon. So, let's do Ash of War Stomp, and then when we do that, we will get an option to change the affinity of our weapon. Affinities are the, they control the damage scaling, what stat the damage scales with. So if we were to build this with quality, this weapon would increase with strength and dex. It would change that scaling, so you see how the physical damage changes from 110 plus 15, so it's getting 15 bonus damage normally. If we go to quality, that changes to 94 plus 21, which actually shakes out to the same number. That's still 115. But now, the higher our level, it's actually going to change that bonus based on strength and dex. So this isn't like a great example because the quality longsword is literally a starting weapon, and you can't put too many things on it. Like this, the scaling isn't really good to begin with, but you can change the affinity of your weapons and change how they scale using Ashes of War. Certain Ashes of War grant different affinities, and they are also abilities in themselves. So we'll change this to quality just for now. Shields have their own Ashes of War. I don't know if torches ever do, but I'm not somebody who uses Ashes of War a lot. But now that we have assigned an Ash of War, if we were to... Let me bring up the UI. I play with it off just because I like being immersed, but how do I bring up the UI? HUD on. Okay, cool. So if you look on the left side, it says parry. That is the Ash of War that is currently assigned to L2. So if we press L2, we parry with our shield. However, we just assigned War Stomp to our sword, so how do we get that? Well, if you hold triangle and press R1, we two-hand our weapon, and now the Ash of War is on the weapon. So now we have Storm Stomp. If we press L2, we do that. That will basically interrupt enemies. So it's a very basic Ash of War. It's one of the starting ones, basically, but it is helpful, and you can just spam it. However, do be aware, you see my FP, my blue bar going down? That costs mana, so keep that in mind. Okay, that is more or less everything that I wanted to go over in this video. However, there is one final thing, and that is Legacy Dungeons. Legacy Dungeons are your typical big, bad dungeons. They have big story bosses, they've got weapons in them, they've got all sorts of stuff. Now, the first Legacy Dungeon of the game is Stormveil Castle, and that is right here. Now, it may seem kind of small, right? Like, it's just this little sliver. How big could this place be? You're going to be in there for hours your first time through. So don't worry. It's meant to be long. It's a huge dungeon. There's a lot to do. It tells a good story. The bosses are sick. So let's go there now. The Guidance of Grace is literally pointing us into this place. Now, because we're approaching at night, the guards in the bushes will mostly be asleep. However, there is a big ballista guarding the door. So I'm going to attempt to just kill this Scarab really fast. And then we're going to go through the bushes here, because ballista can only shoot in the direction that they're pointing. So we have this guy operating the ballista. We're going to run right past him. That blue bar on the ground means that you can't bring Torrent past that point. You're typically better pressing L3 to jump off Torrent rather than getting forced to like despawn Torrent very slowly. So you should always like basically be like jumping over that line. Okay, so here at this side of Grace, the Guidance of Grace is again directing us this way. And you'll notice this looks a little bit intimidating, right? We can see a lot of blood stains from other players, a ton of them, player messages, but then we also have this gold symbol on the ground. If we touch the gold summon sign, we can summon someone named Sorcerer Roger. Sorcerer Roger is an NPC summon. He will be available offline, so he's always there for this fight. Certain fights have NPC summons, certain ones don't. If you want to summon other players, examine this. It opens up the summoning pool, and then you can use a Furl Calling Finger, which I don't have any, but if you have a Furl Calling Finger, use it, and you'll start to see other players' summon signs. All right, so let's bring Sorcerer Roger into this fight, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to skip this cutscene. I don't recommend you skip it. It's actually really sick. One thing I do want to mention is if you hold down on the D-pad, it will always cycle fully back through whatever item you have on first. So it'll always go to this item here, which is that flask. So if you're ever like lost in your own menu, go ahead and just hold down on the D-pad. So Sorcerer Roger is doing his best to help us. This boss's weak point is his tail. So if you can get behind him, start dealing damage to the tail, and he may or may not get stunned. That's a stun right there. And then if you walk up and you press R1, you'll get a riposte there. This boss cannot be knocked off the edge. However, you can. So be very careful near the edges. Now, you'll see here, this boss has a ton of health and is dealing quite a lot of damage. Sorcerer Roger is already half dead. That tail swipe just took a chunk. All of his hits are dealing a lot of stamina sort of damage to me. All right, we got another stun here. So it's clear that this boss is really tough. He's big, he's got a unique model, he talks smack to us, so clearly he's important, clearly he's a big story boss. That's kind of how you know. And here he is, almost completely killing Sorcerer Roger. Luckily he's helping us out though. So this is actually going kind of well, but chances are you're gonna get murdered by this boss. Like, I just kind of know what he's doing, but even me, like, he just killed Roger, now he's gonna be on me the entire time. I can summon my wolves to try to help me out. I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but... oh, I mistimed that. Yeah, so my wolves are just like kind of sitting here dying. Like, they're really not much help. I'm getting knocked around. I don't really have any flasks left. One wolf is down. We got 2 left with barely any health themselves. Yep, that's another one down. Gonna attempt to heal. Luckily, I mean, this is actually going okay. Like, I'm down to his name. Yep, but I just got knocked off the ledge, and I'm dead. So, clearly this boss is giving me a hard time. Chances are he's giving you a hard time as well. The Guidance of Grace has led us here. However, like I said very early on in this video, the Guidance of Grace does not always push us where we should be going. It just pushes us where we need to be going. But since we have died, and this boss kind of kicked our ass, we should probably go somewhere else. We should probably figure out what to do. What I recommend doing from this point is if this boss is giving you a hard time, or if any boss is ever giving you a hard time, leave. Go somewhere else. You have this whole zone to explore. You've got Eastern Limgrave even. We haven't even touched this yet except to get the Flask of Wondrous Physik. You've got so much to explore here. Limgrave is the most densely packed zone in the game as far as dungeons go. There is a ton to do here, more NPCs to meet, and more ways to level up your character, more smithing stone shards to find, more weapons to find, more spells to find. So, if Margit is proving difficult to you, save him for later and go do something else. Now, a little cheat that I want to show you is our runes, our bloodstain is now locked behind this fog wall. However, you can just go get the bloodstain, and you may be saying to yourself, but wait, like, you're locked in this boss room. Like, you're not going to be able to get out. While that is true, 1, 2, we can quit the game. And when you quit the game in a boss fight, you automatically get put outside the boss room upon reload. So this is a really good way to get your bloodstain back. See, we have our runes, and we're outside the boss fog. So, little cheat way to do that, but it's very, very useful. Okay, so there's an NPC that I said I would show you where she is, and that is, her name is Sellen, Sorceress Sellen. She is the magic vendor for the early game. So she is in another section of Limgrave called the Waypoint Ruins. Kalé was selling a hint for that. Waypoint Ruins is like over here. So we're just going to get up on this ridge, and then we're going to follow it along. Sellen, however, is guarded by a boss. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to be ready for a fight. That said, the boss isn't that difficult. It's just a giant kind of doofy enemy. All right, where are we at? Yes. Okay. So let's come up here. My marker wasn't entirely accurate, but most important thing is over here. So Sorceress Sellen is like right over here. You'll notice this big plant, which we're going to ignore. And we are looking for an entrance. You can see the light over there. Always follow the light. So let's kill this boss really quick. This is the Mad Pumpkinhead. Summon our wolves. That should help us out. Now, the funny thing about this boss is he's got a big metal head, and if you were to hit the head, you wouldn't deal any damage to him. So you have to get behind him. You have to try to hit his limbs. Otherwise, you're really not going to be able to do much against this boss. Luckily, the wolves are kind of helping out. His weapon does build bleed, so that red meter on the screen is bleed. If that were to fill all the way up, I would take massive bonus damage, and we don't want that. Nope, I don't want to do that. So he can use his head as a weapon, which is kind of funny, but yeah. All right. I don't think, maybe that's death. Yep. Okay, we got him. All right, so he goes down, and then a Site of Grace forms, and now this door is able to be opened. And behind this door is Sorceress Sellen. So speak with her, tell her you want her to teach you, and then she will begin teaching you how to use spells. All right, so now that we have rested at a bunch of sites of grace. We've reached Stormville Castle. Melina reveals that she's been testing us, and she will invite us to Roundtable Hold. You only have one option, and that is to go to Roundtable Hold, and this is where we're going to finish this guide. So, Roundtable Hold is this game's hub. If you've played Dark Souls 1, kind of like Firelink Shrine. If you played Dark Souls 3, kind of like Firelink Shrine. More like Firelink Shrine from Dark Souls 3. But Roundtable Hold is a sanctuary. And what that means is on the left side of the screen, you'll notice this gold icon right above our currently equipped Ash of War, and that means it's a sanctuary. We cannot swing our weapons in a sanctuary. We cannot attack in a sanctuary. It is a safe place. Real quick, this is Brother Korheen. He is the incantation vendor for the early game. If you come across books, spell books for incantations, give them to him. That will increase his available inventory for you to purchase more and more incantations. So these are all of the faith spells in the game. He is your vendor for the most part. This gentleman here, this person's name is Dialos. He's just a quest NPC, does have rewards, but he's not a vendor, but he does have an important quest. This gentleman right here has one of the best voice actors I think I've ever heard. His accent is sick. His name is Sir Gideon Ofnir the All-Knowing. He will sort of guide you on the main quest of the game, telling you about various NPCs to go find. This statue of Marika is for Coliseum combat. This is a PvP function. There are 3 Coliseums in the game, and one of them is in Limgrave. It's right here. It's for PvP, but I recommend unlocking them. And as you find the 3 Coliseums and activate their statues, you can then just use this statue to enter Coliseums. You don't have to go to the Coliseums anymore. Okay, over here, through this room, we have Fia, Deathbed Companion. She is a very important NPC with an even more important quest. However, whenever you speak with her and allow her to hug you, she will give you an item called a Baldachin's Blessing. Anytime she does that, go to your inventory, find it, and use it because it debuffs you. You want to get rid of it every single time. This is Smithing Master Hugh. Hugh is this game's blacksmith, and he can strengthen armaments all the way up to plus 25 on normal weapons and shields, and plus 10 on special weapons and shields. Something to note is that upgrading your shields is very important. As you upgrade your shield and as they get higher in level, while blocking, you will take less stamina damage. So it's very important to level up your shields throughout the game. It's more important to level up weapons. Down this set of stairs, an NPC named Nefeli Lu will eventually show up here. You can find her in the world and bring her back. And then through here, we have an imp statue that we can use our Stonesword key in that we found earlier at the Stormhill Shack. That causes this fog wart to disappear. Surprise, we have another imp statue guarding more treasure. But through here, we have a treasure, which is Crepus's black key crossbow and a black key bolt. Pretty good crossbow for the early game. I don't even know the stats on it. 14 strength, 16 dex, so probably by the time like you're getting into Southern Limgrave, that'll be good for you. And then over here, this door to the north will open when you kill your first demigod boss. Over here, if you were to jump over this railing, the sanctuary sign goes down and you can see bloodstains there. It means somebody's down there trying to kill you, but you can fight back and I recommend killing them. Through here, this door will open later on. This is Gideon's office, more or less. He'll move in there. This is Ensha, the edgelord. If you speak with him, they don't say anything, but you do get an emote called What Do You Want? This door opens much later on and has an important NPC there. And then this statue is the Twin Maiden Husks. You can offer a bell bearing. Unfortunately, we do not have any bell bearings on us, but bell bearings expand this statue's shop. So this statue sells a whole wealth of goods, and as you get more bell bearings, give them to the statue and the shop expands. There's no other use for bell bearings. Always give them to this statue. And that's it. So that is how to start off Elden Ring. I hope this guide has been helpful to you. Like I said, our first Legacy Dungeon is Stormville Castle. It is currently guarded by Margit the Fell Omen, but Legacy Dungeons, Legacy Dungeon is not a in-world term. Nobody is going to say, go to this Legacy Dungeon, but these are your big, sprawling dungeons with very important story bosses. They're referred to Legacy Dungeons by From Software. So that's why we call them those. But these are your big, really important things. There's important story bosses there. There's weapons, there's spells, there's big stuff there. They are your major destinations of the game, and there are quite a few of them. But that is Elden Ring. That is the start of Elden Ring. I hope this hour and 20-minute guide has been helpful to you for starting off your adventure. But like I said before, while leveling your weapon is important, playing more intelligently is even more important. The stats are not important. The damage you're dealing is not important. You are the weapon. Your brain is the weapon. And the better you can become at this game, the easier it's going to become for you. You're going to be able to recognize patterns. You're going to be able to recognize what certain enemies are able to do at certain points in their health. You're going to know how they choose to attack, whether they run away all the time like imps, or they are just, balls to the wall, full-on aggression. They have high poise. You know how to deal with them. It's very important that you pay attention to what you are doing in this game at all times. Don't just mash R1 and think you're going to win. It's not that kind of RPG. The game is not very forgiving. However, death is not a punishment in this game. It is a tool. Use death to learn. Understand why you died. Understand maybe you pressed R1 too many times in a sequence and you just got obliterated because of it, because you couldn't step back and block. Death is a tool. It's a teaching tool. It is not meant to just be punishing for the sake of punishing. This isn't Dark Souls 2. This is Elden Ring. All the other Souls games are like this. Dark Souls 2 gets a little silly on the punishments, but death is always just a teacher. It's not meant to frustrate you. It's meant to make you learn. I will leave you with a bar from the movie Monkey Man, directed by Dev Patel and starring Dev Patel. And that is one of the monks tells him, the pain will leave you when it's done teaching you. When you learn, you'll stop dying. That's how these games work. But that's it. Go explore Limgrave. If Margaret is still giving you a lot of trouble, explore Eastern Limgrave. There's a ton of caves and catacombs and mines that I haven't uncovered here for you. I'm just sort of showing you how to get started, but go to the east and then go to the south. And then once you finish the west, south, and east, go to Stormvale, and you'll have a much better time. Follow the guidance of Grace to find where you're supposed to go for the story, and then explore the areas around it so you can actually get through those dungeons. But that's it. I wish you the absolute best of luck in Elden Ring. One final shortcut that I will leave you with is if you open the map, you press triangle to bring up the Sites of Grace menu. If you look on the bottom of this screen, you'll see that square goes to Roundtable hold. So you press square, and then you're good to go. So all you got to do is press touchpad, triangle, square, X, and you will immediately teleport to Roundtable hold. It's really helpful if you're trying to get away from bad situations. Okay, but that's it. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. I'll do my best to help you out. If you're looking for more guides for Elden Ring, please subscribe to the channel because I will be covering Shadows of the Erdtree in depth once that releases in a couple of weeks. And of course, there are hundreds of Elden Ring guides on my channel. I will leave a link to each playlist in the description below. Got a playlist for bosses, got a playlist for puzzles and dungeons, and then I have a third playlist, which is a full playthrough walkthrough where I bring you through this entire game a bit more slowly in like 60 or 70 parts, and I bring you through the entire game as I'm playing it. So it's like all recorded, mostly live, where I'm just sitting and playing and talking. All of my mistakes are left in, all of my deaths are left in, and it is a very, in my opinion, accessible way to go through this game. I try to teach you things as I play, give you a lot of lore tidbits, a lot of context around the game, some development behind the scenes stuff that I know, and I hope it's just a fun time. The feedback has been it's a fun time to play along with. So subscribe to the channel for when you guys go live. If you're interested in supporting the channel monetarily, please consider becoming a channel member. You could do so by clicking the heart icon. No, sorry. You do so by clicking the join icon below this video. You can also leave a super thanks by clicking the heart icon below this video. Since this video is not being edited, I do want to give a shout out to my channel members. John Aldrich with 49 months, Silver Bullet 13 with 36 months. Happy 3 years, Silver Bullet, Joe. Daniel Cockerill with 31 months. The Elden Ring God in my Discord, Daniel Cockerill. Brian Brubaker with 26 months. Baghdad Money with 22 months. Greg with 20 months. X-Lightning84 with 15 months. Harv Fontanilla with 13 months. Jason Naps with 2 months. And Working Class Nerds with 9 days. Special shout out to Marcus from Working Class Nerds for suggesting that I make a beginner's guide for Elden Ring. Don't forget to join my community Discord. The link for that is in the description below. As always, I'm Sweet Johnny Cage. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck in Elden Ring. Bye-bye.